Hi, everyone, and welcome to an exciting new episode of Anoki Uncensored, airing for free on the world's #1 South Asian radio station, Ruckus Avenue Radio, on the iHeartRadio app. Just download the app and search Ruckus Avenue Radio, where episodes air every Tuesday at 7 p.m. PST and 10 p.m. EST. You can also watch the episodes on the GIRN YouTube channel and the Anoki Media Facebook page, so hop on over to both and join. I'm your host, GIRN, and I'm coming to you today to chat with Dr. Ruby Dhalla, who just announced that she is running for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. Ruby first made waves when she became the first South Asian female MP outside of India in 2004. Having served 3 terms during her tenure until 2011, Ruby has amassed a vast legacy of political experience and connections, both within Canada and internationally, so many believe she is well poised for the position. From humble beginnings as the daughter of a single mother, an immigrant growing up in the poorest part of Winnipeg, Canada, to realizing the Canadian dream as the owner of a slew of medical centers, hotels, and real estate, she is now embarking on a journey to help Canadians do the same, realize their dreams. At an unprecedented time in history, where, as we all know, Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau has stepped down from office, seeing and witnessing the current turmoil and uncertainty in the Liberal Party's leadership, Ruby has made the pivotal decision to step back into politics, and my job today is to find out why. Without further ado, please welcome to the show former Member of Parliament, successful serial entrepreneur, and perhaps Canada's next Prime Minister, Dr. Ruby Dhalla. Welcome to the show, Ruby, and thank you so much for agreeing to come on.
Thank you so much. Raj, you've always been such a tremendous supporter of women. You've been a tremendous supporter of cultural communities all over Canada. And it is a pleasure, for myself and a great honor to see your success, your achievements, your journey, and to join you for the very first podcast since I have announced my intention to be the leader for the Liberal Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada.
Well, first and foremost, why are you running for leadership of the Liberal Party? Let's just go right deep there.
Firstly, to be very honest, I've been manifesting this since I was in grade 5. My mom kept many of my records and my books and my write-ups since I was very young. And we found one of my write-ups, that I had written a few days ago. And in it, the teacher had asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I actually had written, I want to be the Prime Minister of Canada. So I really believe, in the power of manifestation. But on a, serious note, as you mentioned in your introduction, we are going through an unprecedented time in Canadian history and in world politics. And I think it is about time that our country has a leader and a prime minister who's going to stand up for Canadians, who's going to fight for Canadians, and who is going to understand Canadians and our great country. And I believe with my entry into the race, given my journey, given my experience, not only as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a healthcare provider, but also as someone who has been elected 3 times as a member of parliament, I have the vision, the passion, and an action plan to achieve that.
I feel like you've already answered my next question, but for anyone that's just joining us, I want you to just kind of clarify it for everyone. What qualifies you for this position?
I believe firstly and most importantly that you have to have passion in life for whatever you do. And I have always been passionate about people. I have dedicated my entire life to public service because I believe that public service is a calling. In terms of qualifications, I think right now when we hear of stories across the country, and many of your viewers are going to be able to relate and to connect with this, that people in Canada right now are struggling. They're struggling to put a roof over their head. They're struggling to put food on their table because when they go to the grocery store, the prices of groceries have just risen astronomically. Even if they're paying their cell phone bills, we have some of the highest cell phone bills, in the world. And it just goes to show the struggle that people have. And then you can talk about crime. People's cars are getting stolen off of their driveways, or there's all of these robberies happening for businesses. And then we get on to, talking about entrepreneurs and business owners and the number of taxes that they're having to pay. It's becoming difficult. Whether you're a young person, whether you're a senior, whether you're a family, whether you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, it is getting so challenging for every person to make ends meet. What makes me fit as the leader for the Liberal Party of Canada and the next Prime Minister of Canada is that I understand those struggles firsthand because I have lived them. And I think when you have that ability to connect with people and that ability to understand those struggles, the ability to have insight into some of those sacrifices, that have been made, it allows you to go through that journey, to have that experience, but most importantly, really to develop solutions that are going to ensure prosperity, that are going to ensure growth, and that are going to ensure success, not only for all Canadians, but also for our country.
I have to ask you this, Ruby, because, you're quite late to the game. There's a lot of people who have already thrown their hat on the table for this. What is it that you're not seeing amongst them that made you feel that you need to put your hat on that table too?
I actually gave it a lot of thought, before I entered. For those that know me, they know that I have dedicated my life to public service. I have been with the Liberal Party since I was 14 years of age. I have worked on hundreds of campaigns. I've knocked on thousands of doors. And in the beginning of your introduction, you talked about how I grew up in Winnipeg with very humble beginnings. And now God, through a lot of hard work, drive, determination, and the blessings and support of my mother, that we've been able to achieve and build a successful business. And I think having that insight, and that journey, my journey is a journey that so many people can relate and connect to, because it is really, in some ways, the Canadian dream. Because as you said, my mom came in the 70s, as an immigrant, and she left India to have a better life, for the future of her children. And when I took a look at all of the people that were running, I am so passionate about standing up for people, for fighting for people, because I can connect with them. That was my number one motivation. We need to have someone that can understand and connect with what average Canadians are going through. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Nothing was handed to me. I worked very hard to get to where I am. The other element, that was involved in my decision was to have someone who is actually an owner of a business. I started off, when I graduated as a doctor, with one patient in one room. And then I built my chiropractic practice, to seeing many patients in a day, and into a very successful chain of healthcare clinics. And then going on to hospitality, when we had the tragedy with my brother passing away, and not knowing anything about the hotel space other than how to use Expedia to book a room, and winning Woman Hotelier of the Year award, a few months back. I know of the challenges that businesses are facing, that entrepreneurs in this country is facing. And, all of the people that are running all have excellent credentials, but none of them have actually had firsthand experience in terms of owning and operating a business. The other motivation for me is that, having been in the Liberal Party of Canada since I was 14 years of age, it's so important to have the voices of diversity. And every person that is running has, in some way or the other, they've been involved with the current administration for the last 10 years. I am the only person out of all of the candidates that hasn't been involved with the current administration. And I felt there was a necessity, because I have been involved for so many years from such a young age, that we need to start bringing the party back towards the center. We need to ensure that we have fiscally responsible programs, but also with a social element. We need to ensure that we start taking care of our own backyard before we start to look out for other parts of the world.
Let's lay it out for everyone, Ruby. Can you share your campaign mandate? What do people need to know? Why should they vote for you?
First and foremost, our campaign slogan is Canada's comeback starts now. We need to have a leader who is going to get our country back into business, who's going to ensure that Canada and our great country commands a respect that it deserves. I no longer want to settle for Canada to be a laughing stock in the world because of the policies and programs that we have created. I think it is very important to have a leader who has insight and perspective and has legislative experience, but also has business experience, and most importantly, has the ability to understand and connect with people. And the one thing I can tell you, Raj, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me, when you actually go out there and you talk to people, whether they live in a small town or they live in a bigger city or they live up, in the territories, people are really, really angry and they're really mad, and, they're frustrated and they're upset because they're having this difficulty, making ends meet. And they're finding that Canada is no longer the country that it once was. And how many people do we all know in common that are actually leaving Canada?
Mm-hmm.
We have to start thinking about, why are we getting this brain drain in our country? And we may not notice the impact of it now, but in years to come, it's going to impact the growth and the success, of our economy and our country. And that's why I think that it is incredibly important as a leader to have someone that is firm, that is decisive. When you get elected, the goal should not be, that you want to be liked by everybody, but you should be respected for the decisions that you undertake to make life better for the average person. And you want to, at the same time, for business, you also want to create an environment of innovation, an environment that allows people to flourish and allows people ultimately really to create jobs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you win and become Canada's first South Asian female prime minister, you'll be up for a huge fight, Ruby. You know it. We all know it. Both within the party to get everyone on page for elections, and outside the party to combat Canada's economic situation and serious external threats from the US regarding tariffs. What can we expect will be the first few things that you do to get your party on your side and to also cool the temperature with the US?
Raj, you asked, a really great question. And that I can tell you that, when people found out, I was making calls across the country, talking to a lot of individuals, grassroots members and members of parliament, people that are currently elected or were elected, but most importantly, to a lot of members across this country. And some have traditionally been supporters and others haven't. There was sort of this gasp, by some of them. And they were like, you know what? She's an outsider because she hasn't been involved in the party in the last 10 years. So some people view me as an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's others, for whom I think that, what, she's a breath of fresh air because she speaks her mind. She's not going into this looking for a job. She's not a lifelong or a career-long, politician. So those people think that, what, we need someone like her because she is this breath of fresh air and she does have the ability, and the experience, to be able to navigate our country through the many challenges that we have. When you talk about being the first South Asian woman, as Canada's prime minister, it fills my heart with pride because it speaks to the Canadian dream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about the South Asian community, but it's really about all women of color in this country. And it speaks to all of the immigrants. And I get emotional talking about it because one of my deciding factors, of developing the strength and the courage to be able to put your name, into these, very credible individuals that are running for the leadership. One of my motivating factors, I looked at all of the candidates and I was like, it was 2025. This is the Liberal Party of Canada. And the one thing that Trudeau has done is that he has really promoted, women and ensuring that we have equity and equality, in terms of the cabinet representation. And I looked back and I was like, it's 2025. Why do we not have the voice of an immigrant woman, or a woman of color? And I hope, just like I did, in 2004 when we ran and, we made history because I was the first woman of Indian origin that was elected in the Western world. That wasn't my victory. That was a victory not only of every single South Asian, family that is living here, but it was a victory of immigrants. And I hope that this election, when people elect Ruby Dhalla as the next Prime Minister for Canada, it will not be the victory of Ruby Dhalla. This will be the victory of all immigrants, of all women, and all young people in this country. And I hope that it will inspire and it will motivate. Your last part of your question about how do you deal with external threats? Anyone that knows me knows that when it comes to running a business, I am no nonsense. I believe in efficiency. I believe in an approach where you have to have a velvet glove and an iron fist. And that approach, I think, is really important for someone like President Donald Trump. We must ensure at any cost that we protect our sovereignty, we protect our country, and we ensure that Canadians and Canada is prospering. There are a number of measures that have been proposed. Some people believe that we should have retaliatory measures. Other individuals are saying that we should have more of a conciliatory approach. I believe that we should have a combination of both. Mr. Trump should know that we, at the end of the day, are not going to sacrifice at any cost the prosperity or the success of our country and our people. But at the same time, we must ensure that we have a collaborative approach, because when Canada and the US works together, we are and will continue to build a superpower that cannot be reckoned with. And I think it is important to have that collaborative, approach to this. When I attended the inauguration of Donald Trump, I had other CEOs who are very concerned about the Canada and the US situation when it comes to tariffs. So we had a number of CEOs from both sides, of the border that joined together to create the Canada-US Business Alliance. And we went to the inaugural ceremonies. And it was at those ceremonies of meeting so many of the representatives. I had the chance and opportunity to meet the governor of Virginia, the senator, the Secretary of State, Senator Marco Rubio, and many other individuals. It was a chance to educate them about the greatness of Canada and the impact that these types of tariffs would have, not only on Canadians, but also on Americans.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the, issues that Canadians are facing. And perhaps let's see a little bit about, how you governing our nation would make a difference. How do you intend, let's start here first. How do you intend on jumpstarting the housing deficit we have in Canada? It's something that nobody's been able to, really rectify. And it's not a short solution, which is what everyone is feeling. But, it's a problem that is truly a, everyday Canadian problem. So I want to start with that one first.
I think we need to do something that is innovative and creative. When we take a look that we live in the 21st century and there's Canadians across this country, especially young people, especially new graduates, who have graduated with a university degree, are working at relatively very good jobs, and they're struggling to put a roof over their head. It's just completely unjust, and it's something that's unfathomable. So I think that we need to have innovative solutions. One of the proposals that is of great interest is to ensure for a certain period of time, we could take a look at removing the capital gains that one would earn on the profit of their house, because there's a lot of investors out there that have these homes, and because of the ramifications of tax, they actually do not go out and sell those particular homes. So if the government provided those investors with a capital gains, exemption for a certain period that would be tax-free, where their profits would not get taxed, I think that that would be great incentive for those particular investors to go out there to sell their homes. That would free up more housing. It would increase, the supply that's available, thus reducing, the challenge that people have in purchasing a house, and also the lowering of prices.
Mm-hmm. I think a part of that is also the immigration policies that we've all been facing. Can we go there next, Ruby? Can you touch upon that? There's a lot that people have been saying around this, and whoever it is that takes leadership of this party or even of our country is really going to be up against quite a complicated situation with the immigration policies. How would you change them, if at all?
Well, I'm the daughter of, immigrant parents, and, just like yourself, and there's, millions of young people, and there's millions of Canadians across this country that are immigrants. And I always say, when you take a look at Canada, you actually see the rest of the world. So we are a country of immigrants. However, coming from that perspective, even though, I was born and raised here in Canada, and have seen the journey that one can have in Canada through the Canadian dream, I do think that it is very important for the Prime Minister of this country to take a very planned approach to immigration. I do not agree with the manner in which immigration has been done over the past 10 years. We've had an influx of immigrants come in. Not only has it been an injustice to Canadians that are living here, that were born and raised here, but also Canadians that have come here. It's also an injustice to those immigrants that are coming into the country. And we all know of stories, and sometimes they're heart-wrenching, where you have, 5, 6, 7 students living in a basement apartment. You have all of these students who don't have the resources that they should have, living in a first world country. So they are struggling. So because the immigration, policy hasn't been planned from a long-term perspective, you have these immigrants that have come in that are struggling. Then you have Canadians, that are already having difficulty putting a roof over their head. You have Canadians who are having difficulty in finding jobs that are born and raised here. And then you're having difficulty with many of the services that we have. And one of the greatest examples being in healthcare. So I think the Prime Minister of the country needs to take a very, very responsible approach to this, being, pro-immigration. However, it has to be done in a planned manner. Letting everyone in does an injustice to everyone. And now we as a country, as you said earlier on, we as a country are going to have to spend many years navigating through some of these decisions that have been made because of the fact that proper planning has not been done.
Do you think the answer, the solution is what's happening over in the US right now, where, Trump and his administration is wanting to send people back?
Well, they want, it's a very good question, but they want to send back people that have just jumped the border illegally. And I also actually agree with that approach. If you've come to Canada illegally, by illegal means, then you need to be deported out of the country. I think that, when it comes to any type of crime, and that is criminal because you're coming here illegally, if you come illegally into this country, you need to be deported. And as soon as you start laying down the gamut, and as soon as you start becoming very strict on these immigration policies, I think that you're naturally going to have a reduction. And, the one area that I mentioned, as well when it comes to this is crime. We need to ensure that in our country, if you do the crime, you're going to do the time. And I think we need to have a no-nonsense approach. When people know that the laws, or criminals know that the laws are so lenient, they will navigate, every way which possible to ensure that they will find a loophole, because they know they'll go rob a store, steal a car, and they're going to be out in the next few days. So we have to ensure, we have a Habitual Offenders Act, and we need to ensure that we strengthen that if we have repeated offenders, we need to start taking a look at those types of solutions, which is going to help reduce the crime. But I think when criminals know that Canada is no longer, going to put up with this type of criminal activity or criminal behavior, you will ultimately ensure greater safety for the country.
Let me ask you a few brass tacks questions here, Ruby. Every single Canadian is facing these exorbitant costs around groceries. What is the plan for making simple things, basic needs like groceries, more affordable? How do we, how is that going to be navigated? Because that has not been something that the Trudeau government has been able to resolve, especially since COVID.
Well, the first tax that I would be getting rid of as Prime Minister is the carbon tax. We need to ensure that we end the carbon tax. The second tax that I would be getting rid of for all of the business owners across this country is the increased limit of the capital gains tax that has been put in. We have to ensure that we as a country start competing globally. And, as you mentioned earlier on, I've done a lot of work internationally. And as a result, I've worked with many political figures from all different countries. And I have seen the type of tax structures that these countries have created, to make themselves so competitive that people from all over the world, want to move there. And we in Canada, we're having the opposite problem. Everyone's wanting to move out because our tax system is just not competitive. So one of the initiatives that I would put in addition to ending the carbon tax, in addition to ending the capital gains tax, is that I would actually have a complete reevaluation of our entire tax regime. And I think taking a step back, evaluating our entire tax base or tax regime, that's going to ensure that Canadians put more money into their pockets and that Canadians actually get a concept which I would like to introduce called value for tax. We go out, if we go shopping or we go out, we're buying even coffees, you always want to ensure that you're getting value for money. We have to ensure, as a government and as Canadians, that if anyone is being charged tax, that they're actually getting value for it. So I think that is one of the greatest initiatives. One of the initiatives that I would actually bring in, as Prime Minister, is to have a reevaluation of our tax regime. And I would ensure that our new tax system and tax model is competitive globally so that we can invite innovation, that we would want people to come and invest in Canada to create further jobs, and that Canadians across this country would actually have more prosperity.
You have a vast international network. How can that benefit Canada?
I believe that relationships are really important. When I went to, and I'll use Trump's inauguration, as an example, we had a few of the Canadian ministers, that were there. Our Prime Minister was nowhere to be seen. And it's a concept that everyone will relate to: out of sight and out of mind. And in these types of situations, one has to put their personal issues aside and do what is right for the greater good, to carry out your professional responsibilities. So we see that the current administration has had an issue with the incoming president of the United States. We also see that the current administration has had an issue with China. The incoming administration has also had an issue with Saudi Arabia. And the list just goes on and on and on. And we were, you know, at a time, I remember growing up in Winnipeg, the foreign affairs minister at that time was Lloyd Axworthy. Our country, Raj, was so respected and revered. People always wanted to see and waited to hear what Canada had to say. And
Mhm.
now Canada has been put to the back of the line. And when I travel internationally and I hear the comments that are made about our country, sometimes we are laughed at, sometimes there are these off the cuff negative comments that are made. It's heartbreaking because, I'll come home and sometimes I'll share them with my mom, and my mom will always, praise what a great country it was because they came, to Canada with this dream. And, many of us are the embodiment of what can be achieved. But we also have to ensure that we utilize our international relationships, we utilize our international network to benefit, the people that actually live in Canada, all Canadians, but also benefits our country. And one of my missions, as Prime Minister would be to bring back Team Canada, because I think when you engage, entrepreneurs and business with government, the private sector, the policy sector, and we have these Team Canada approaches, I think that it is very effective for us. The other mandate that I would have would be to ensure that Canada, once again, earns a respect that it deserves internationally. And my main mission would be to ensure that Canada is the #1 country in the world.
It's really interesting listening to you, Ruby, because, when we look at the last 10 years and we look at the leaders of the world, the most powerful countries in the world, you're absolutely right. They don't respect our country. And, many people feel it is because of, the feeling they have around Trudeau as a leader. There's quite a gap to be filled in terms of bringing back the respect and the dignity and the strength of leadership that Canada has been known to be in, the leaderships around the world. What do you feel needs to happen there? And what would you do to bring back the glory of the strength in leadership with the powerful leaders of this world?
To bring back and showcase the glory, of what Canada is, we need to showcase the great people that we have across this country. And we need to showcase our success stories that we have in this country. We need to promote our people at every opportunity we get. Whether you talk about our manufacturers, that are building cars, whether you take it down to the basics and talk about fashion designers that are, designing clothes, whether you talk about other entrepreneurs that are working in the tech and the AI space, whether you talk about those that are innovating in healthcare, we need to start showcasing all Canadians. We need to start showcasing what they are building and what they are creating. I have found in the current regime, there always seems to be some sort of personality conflict. And for all of those that know me, I'm the type of individual that works in a collaborative and a cooperative approach. And at the same time, I don't allow any nonsense to happen. I'm a fierce negotiator, and I always make sure that we get the best deal possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I was giving an analogy earlier on today, when I was on on the news stations, and I was saying it's like, when a husband and wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend are arguing and they're both yelling at each other, no rational minds prevail. And you never achieve any results, out of that except this big shouting match that erupts. But it's only when, the situation has calmed down and calmer temperaments have prevailed that you actually get, that patch up happening or that argument getting resolved. And it's the same analogy that one can use, even though it's very basic, on an issue of foreign affairs. Us yelling and screaming with other countries, it's not going to do us as a nation any good. And we see that right now because the world is changing because of globalization. We need to ensure that we work in cooperation, in collaboration, we put personalities aside and we focus on getting the job done. And that means putting personal egos aside, putting any type of personality conflicts that one has, being a professional and saying, do you know what? I'm here to represent my country. I'm here to represent the people. I'm going to bite my tongue and I'm going to get that job done. That's what's important, because people ultimately, what do they want, Raj? They all want results. And I think it's important for the Prime Minister to be focused on achieving results.
Canada has a huge resource of energy. There's a lot of energy discussions that, have been going on at the beginning stages of Trump's, time as president. Any thoughts, any comments around that?
I think energy, as you said, it's a very, very important resource that we have, but we must ensure that we not only protect it, but we also showcase it and we export it. And, you take a look at provinces like Alberta, the economic situation there, it wasn't what it was 10 years ago. And that's why I think it's incredibly important, that we as a country start showcasing our people, our products, to ensure that we build greater trade relationships. Right now we're so US dependent, and we have not only a lot of exports going out, but also imports coming in. We need to see, just as Donald Trump is doing for his people, talking about making America great again, or talking about let's buy America first, we need to start ensuring that we have a buy Canada policy first. Why is it that the government, abandons Canadian manufacturers, Canadian entrepreneurs? Why are we as a Canadian government not buying from Canadians? So we should also, I think, learn from that type of perspective or that type of policy, and ensuring that we implement a made in Canada policy first at every level. And that will ensure, whether it's a sector like energy, whether it's a sector like manufacturing, that ultimately we will start building, an economy in which there is growth.
If you do indeed become Canada's next Prime Minister, Ruby, what
I'm coming back on your show.
You better. I have so many more questions to ask you then. What legacy would you like to leave and be known for? Because you're entering, as we mentioned, very unprecedented times, and the layers of challenge are great.
I agree that it is an unprecedented time, not only in Canadian history, but global history as well. We are also dealing with situations and circumstances in the world that are also very unprecedented. And many of the rule books, that were written, for previous civilizations or historically, they've kind of all been like thrown out, the window. And it's interesting that you ask that question, because when I was at the inauguration, none of the cars could ever get to the venue. So you would have to walk for, 20, 30, 40 minutes, sometimes for an hour, to get to where you needed to go. And as I was walking, I, started reflecting on this decision that I was going to undertake when I got back. And I thought to myself, what would I want my legacy to be as the Prime Minister of our country? And for me, it would be to leave a legacy where every child and every young person, and especially, the woman, but all young people, it would be a legacy in which they would be able, by believing in themselves and working hard, that they would be able to achieve their dreams. And it would be the fulfillment of the Canadian dream. Because now when I take a look, there's so many people that are leaving the country for various reasons, and there's so many people struggling. I want to leave a legacy where people are coming in. We have, Canadians not wanting to leave, because we have created an environment, where they have the opportunity to reach the greatest of heights. And that's what I would want my legacy to be, where every child, regardless of where they live in Canada, would be able to believe in themselves and would be able to prosper. And the last part of my legacy that I would want is for Canada to get the respect that it commands and that it deserves on the world stage.
Any final words you have for Canadians watching this, reading this, listening to this, who may not remember you from your political days or have even been around when you were in office, to encourage them to vote for you over all the other candidates? What would you say to them?
I would say to all of the people that are watching today, be a part of creating history and of making history. And it is through having a vision and having passion, and that passion has led into this purpose, that together we can make our country stronger and more successful and more prosperous, so that every person, regardless of what cultural background they're from, regardless, if they're young or old or rich or poor, that they would have an opportunity to succeed. And for all those that are watching, if you have not been a fan of the current administration and you want to see the Liberal Party of Canada get back towards the center, if you want to have a leader who can connect with you, who understands your struggles, who understands the sacrifices, who understands the challenges, and you want to have a leader who has run a business, who has grown a business, and knows firsthand of the challenges, then I say to all of you, my friends, join me in making history to ensure that Canada's comeback starts now.
Whether you succeed or not, my dear Ruby Dhalla, you have already gone down in history for entering the race as the only South Asian female to do so. As a daughter of a single mother, immigrant, and proud self-made Canadian success story, I applaud your gumption. I applaud you putting others first. I applaud you putting your personal needs aside and putting your nation first. Bravo. Let it begin.
I have a love for, people, and I have a greater love for my country. And if God has blessed me with the opportunity to serve, I'm so humbled and honored to put my name forward and to be the first South Asian woman anywhere in the world outside of India to be running for Prime Minister. And I am humbled and honored, and it speaks to the Canadian dream. And I hope as I enter this race that in years to come, we're going to have this door opening up for so many more women in the leadership races. And I tell everyone this is just the start. So I'm so humbled and honored and grateful. And I want to thank you, Raj, for always promoting women, for empowering women. And I always say that when we all unite, as women, that we are so much stronger and so much better for it.
Such a pleasure and such an honor to speak with you today, my dear Ruby. My wish, my hopes, my prayers are with you, that on your journey, as you soar through every single day with everything and everyone on your mind, may you have Godspeed. May you have the right people on your side, and may you truly be in a position to bring Canada back to its glory. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing why you should be Canada's choice for leadership.
Thank you. And Raj, I just want to say in closing that when you come in as an outsider and you're not a part of the establishment, I know going in They're going to come in to attack us. They're going to come in to try to take us out. They're going to come in because we don't fit, the description of what the person at the helm should look like. But I say to everyone that is watching, this is the time, this is the moment for all of us to unite, because Ruby Dhalla has come back a lot stronger, a lot tougher, a lot wiser. And I think that we have to ensure that every single person that is watching signs up, to get a membership with the Liberal Party, because the membership is free. You only have to be above the age of 14 years. You can either be a Canadian citizen or a PR. We're going to share the link. And on my Instagram, on my Facebook or X, whatever social media platform, that people are watching. And if they can get signed up by January the 27th, we only have a few more days to go. Then on March 9th, each of you signing up, it'll be an opportunity to cast your vote for the next Prime Minister of Canada. Let's go out there. Let's give it all we got. Call your relatives, call your friends, call your neighbors, get everyone signed up. Let's make this happen, because my victory is not going to be the victory of Ruby Dhalla. It's going to be the victory for all of you when we showcase what the Canadian dream can be achieved.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruby Dhalla. And I'll see you all next time on the Anoki Uncensored podcast, guys. Stay connected with us everywhere at Anoki Lifestyle. And don't forget to sign up for our free weekly newsletter at anokilife.com for exclusives just like this, and for all the things that we are doing to continue elevating the South Asian community for over 2 decades. I'll see you next time.